Hello, and welcome to the 2021 IEEE Rising Stars Global Conference. My name is Phil Batista, and my guest today is Mr. Michael Andrews, who had the concept for the Rising Stars Conference, and along with co-founder Tom Coughlin, made the Rising Stars Conference a reality and one of the premier IEEE conferences of our day. Welcome, Mike.
Hi, Phil. How are you doing?
Great. Thank you so much. Mike, with the Rising Stars initial focus being on undergraduate and graduate level engineering students, it's expanded to become a conference where both students and young professionals come to hear leaders in industry present topics and guide our future in terms of technology, business development, professional development, and networking. What can you tell us about your initial concept for the conference with respect to its content and attendees?
Okay, well, what we had in mind when we got it started was the idea of serving as a bridge between that young professional and university student and their career. Rising Stars was designed to have about half of the program be technical in content and the other half related to interpersonal skills and professional development topics. So that when you talked with a fellow professional in the field, you would have something to say to them that might have something to do with the technology that they were involved with, so you would understand that language, or that you were able to say something after you've shaken their hands. You know, what do you do after you said hello? And how are you? And so you don't have to talk about sports and the weather and politics. You could talk about something that was equally interesting to both of you.
Wow. It seems the conference has almost taken on a life of its own. How have you seen it grow and expand from your initial concept to what it has become today?
Well, it has grown tremendously. As I mentioned, the idea was to build this bridge between the students and the young professionals and that experienced professional, that leader. And what was really fortunate, and this is where Tom really came through, is that he hosted a conference called Storage Visions. And that was a technical conference with papers being presented and sponsors and so on, and a lot of technical professionals attending that conference. So the students and young professionals that went to Rising Stars were automatically invited to attend the Storage Visions conference. And there they got a chance to talk with real practicing professionals, you know, practice the language they had learned, develop an understanding for what was happening in computer technology, storage technology, what was the next generation that they were thinking about in communications technology and so forth. That was all encompassed in Storage Visions. And then what we had done is we got invitations to anyone who wanted to go to CES. Wow. So our attendees for Rising Stars would go to Storage Visions and get that image of what it's like to really work with and listen to very technical people, and then go to CES and see brand new products, emerging technologies, and talk with sales professionals, sales engineers, you know, people that were that technical as well as that outward going person, that's that sales guy. And that really worked exceptionally well. And with the conference taking place the 1st of January, you know, we led to CES very, very well. This year, we still point to CES. However, that's all in a virtual environment. And what we've seen is in our attendee evolution is we started as a Region 6 conference. Well, that evaporated year one because we had individuals attending from Canada, we had individuals attending from Mexico, we had individuals attending from east of the Rockies, which is, you know, Region 6 is primarily the 8 Western states. So we saw that interest emerge well past Region 6 boundaries. And what this year is seeing is that we're now a global event. Rising Stars is a unique conference because most other IEEE conferences, and I'm going to say 95% of all other IEEE conferences, have invited papers and there's a lot of research being presented and so forth. And the individuals that we invite to speak, and all of our speakers are invited, the individuals that we invite to speak are thought leaders. They're industry experts. They are decision maker levels of their company. And the people that we have engaged as speakers can make hiring decisions on the spot. But
Wow.
importantly, they can talk about the technology that's happening not only today, but what they anticipate their company doing next year and the year after that and the year after that. And that insight into the future is what has to position our attendees in an unattainable position that anybody would be envious of.
That's amazing. Yeah, I've noticed that, as you say, unlike other conferences where it's an open call for papers, the Rising Stars team decides what they want to talk about and who they want to have presented, and they seek out the industry leaders and ask those people if they want to speak. And generally, I think you've had great success. So tell me what you think the driving force is behind the excitement of the speakers to become involved in the conference, and what goals do they tell you that they have as a speaker?
Well, as speakers, they look at two things. One, they want to give back or promote the industry to the young professionals and the students. And they don't get that chance often. I mean, if you're an executive, you spend your day solving problems related to the business, and you don't really get to meet the people that you're most excited about, which is the young professionals and the university students that are going to join you at your company. So the second piece of that is the speakers, I think, are looking for talent. They're looking for people that they think are going to match the needs of their company. And most of the companies that are at Rising Stars are represented by the speakers or any of the sponsors are global in nature. So you don't have to, live and work in Albuquerque or Phoenix or Seattle. It could be any place all over the world. So you've got companies that are there, like L3 and Facebook and Bentley that have, presences all over the world. And I mean, it's interesting when you're asking somebody to talk about what it's like to be in a technical interview, and you have the global vice president of HR for Google explaining how that works. So you're getting it from a source, you're getting your information from a source that is second to none.
Well, and what a great opportunity to be able to go to this conference and meet with these leaders in industry, face to face. I mean, I've seen at the tables that you have for these different speakers and the sponsors where the young professionals and the students can walk up, hand their resume and get a business card and make that connection, which I think is key for the future leaders that are going to be, governing and building our future. And you and your team have certainly attracted a top tier of decision makers and leaders in their field to become involved as speakers and sponsors of the conference. I mean, you've got folks from Google, Ford, Intel, government entities like DARPA or JPL, Los Alamos is here. So tell me, once we're able to meet in person again, how do you see the conference expanding beyond its virtual presentation now that you're global?
Well, it's going to be interesting because I like the idea of going back to Las Vegas and having the physical conference, because everybody likes shaking hands and seeing you, right in the eye. But what we'll do, I think, next year, and this is really early in the planning process for 2022, is when a speaker finishes stage, we're going to take them over to a recording studio and have them do a presentation that might be a little bit shorter because it's a little bit less interactive. So the session might be 30 minutes instead of 45 minutes, but the speaker will be able to talk to a global audience.
Well, and I've seen
And
that same thing happen at CES. They've got the stages that you walk past on the side where CNN or CNET are doing the interviews with someone who's just given a keynote, to a much wider and global audience, as opposed to just the folks in the room.
yes, and you mentioned CES. I mean, CES is going completely virtual this year as well. So, but I think that the piece with Rising Stars, between the reach that we're trying this year, and this is our first ever virtual event, reaching out beyond the U.S., beyond North America, and working with organizations in Europe and organizations in Asia. Matter of fact, we have speakers from both parts of that world that are joining us this year. I think it provides a real opportunity for a young professional or a student to say, I don't have to work, where I graduated or from, that little circle. I can actually look at states and countries considerably distant from, my alma mater.
Well, as a matter of fact, there's a couple of attendees from last year that got interns I think they were in Arizona, got internships in New Mexico, and now have full-time jobs, and they're working remotely. So they don't even have to actually move to New Mexico to work, say, at Los Alamos.
Right.
But let me ask you this, Mike. What do you get out of putting on a conference with such success and impact as the Rising Stars Conference? And how do other people get involved, either as a volunteer on one of your teams or sponsoring the conference with a financial contribution and getting the opportunity to meet the students and young professionals to know more about the sponsors and the opportunities that they represent?
Well, what I get out of it, there's a lot of teaching moments because the conference is run by volunteers. And a couple of years ago, one of our volunteers stood in front of an audience and said, "This is a volunteer-driven and a volunteer-run conference." And most of the committee, and I'm going to say, 90% of the committee are all young professionals or university students that Rising Stars might be their first adventure into the conference world and what it takes to organize a major event. So that's one. The second reason that I do it is for the stories I can tell. At the end of the day, there's some success or some impact that I've watched or that I've been part of where an attendee has made a connection with a speaker or a sponsor, or a speaker has from the stage, lit a fire in some number of attendees, some percentage of the audience. The topics have gone all over the board. I mean, it's from interviewing and creating a remarkable resume, and how do you build wealth? You've been a student or a young professional, and now you're getting a full-time job that's actually generating significant amount of cash. What do you do with that, and how do you leverage the salary you make? So that's on one side, and then on the other side, there are some technologies that you might have read about, but now you have a chance to talk with the person responsible for that technology. And that's why we close the conference with the next big thing session, is we have people looking, the panel members are looking at 4 or 5 different areas of technology that are exciting not only to them, but to the future of our world. The fact is that most of the change that we're going to see isn't 10 years from now. It's in the next 2 and 3 and 4 years. So if a Rising Stars attendee gets a leg up, gets a competitive advantage, if you're a car, you've got the extra 10 horsepower that nobody else had, or the extra, 200 miles or 100 miles or 50 miles of range that nobody else has got. Those are stories and those are impacts that impact me. and they impact the audience. And that's really why we do this every year.
Wow, what a great opportunity. Mike, thanks for your time. I really appreciate you taking the opportunity to give us a little bit of a history behind the Rising Stars and where it's going forward. Thank you for your time, and I appreciate your dedication. Have a great day.
Thank you. Thank you. And if there's anyone in the audience, anyone listening to this that would like to be part of the Rising Stars organizing committee or get involved as a speaker or a company supporter, contact us. We're all over the website.
Thanks, Mike.
You're welcome.